You'll need to machete to carve it open. And choosing the wrong species could give you headaches and diarrhea.
I think, isn't cacti one of those things that if you drink from the wrong type, you can end up, like, seeing stuff? Like out of your head, kind of.
Then again, if you were lost in the desert, headaches and diarrhea might not be your biggest problem.
And I think there are some cacti that have, like, mind-altering substances in
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't either, but I feel like I've heard or seen that somewhere.
The only desert I've ever been to is the one I drove through on my way to California with you.
Yeah.
Guess you'll figure out in the question of the day later in the episode.
Oh wait, and the one in Vegas. Got Vegas. Vegas is all desert, but it's cool as heck.
Dropped a hint about the question of the day. Did you catch that?
I did catch that.
All right. Was that all of our weird facts?
That was all of our weird facts.
You're done already?
Yes, ma'am.
Over too soon.
Always.
Well, good thing we added the question of the day.
True enough.
Well, since we had something else planned here, do you want to do the weird question of the day now, or do you want to put it later in the show?
Let's do it later in the show.
Let's do it later in the show.
Okay. Well, then let's get into the...
So I can continue dropping...
Oh, God!
So I can continue dropping hints.
Okay. Well, let's get into the Pine Barrens.
Peeing on things.
Oh, Brownie, you stinky.
Okay. Before anybody thinks one of the three of us has a hygiene issue, the dog.
Brownie, come here, brother.
Our half dachshund, half chihuahua dog jumped up on Laura, and he smells like
Brownie.
Well, he just came in from outside, and it just started raining.
Come here,
So
Brownie.
he smells like wet dog. He's already a little dog, and he kind of has hygiene issues, so it's a thing.
he's a mess.
Come here, Brownie.
So
But he's our mess.
let's talk about the Pine Barrens. Now, they're also known as the Pine Lands, or sometimes they're just called the Pines. It's one of the last vestiges of an Atlantic coastal Pine Barrens ecosystem. Most of the European settlers could not grow the crops here they were familiar with, but the acidic, nutrient-poor soil supports orchids, it supports carnivorous plants, and pygmy pitch pines, as well as other conifers that depend on the area's many fires to reproduce. So, unlike the wilder areas of California, this place is supposed to be on fire on a regular basis.
I see.
Now, the area's sandy soil is referred to by the locals as sugar sand, and the area is quite rural, despite its closeness to New York and Philadelphia. The Pine Barrens were home to many real backwoods families. For years, residents of the rural area were called Pineys by outsiders as a derogatory term. Today, many Pinelands residents are proud of both the name and the land on which they live. In fact, in the early 20th century, a family identified in a case study by the pseudonym the Calicax were presented as an example of genetic inferiority by eugenicists. Today, scholars understand that the facts in the Calicax study were misrepresented, including photographs altered to make the family members appear more backwards.
Wow. That's kind of messed up.
Yes. So, whoever the Calicax really were, we're sorry.
Yes, we are.
Science is usually kinder than that.
Yep.
So, let's talk about the Jersey Devil. What's it look like? Well, I will tell you.
It looks like a devil. with wings and stuff, right? No.
Yes, it has wings. It sort of looks. The best way I can describe it is it kind of looks like a donkey that stands on its hind legs. And if you replace the front hooves with talons, and then give it wings.
So if we take the description that you just gave and the story that we started out with, you basically have a kid who's being an ass.
Kind of, I guess. And that tale, just to tell it again, in 1735, Miss Leeds was due to give birth to her 13th child, a child whose delivery was painful and uncomfortable, and many of her neighbors were unhappy about the 13th child. And as the midwives were attending to the child's birth, Mrs. Leeds shouted out, "Let it be a devil, then!" And the creature she gave birth to was indeed a winged, monstrous devil that attacked those present before winging its way into the Pine Barrens. According to other tales, the very fact that it was a 13th child was enough to trigger the curse, causing the baby to change to a winged monster. So in those stories, the baby is born human and becomes a monster afterwards. But because of this, the Jersey Devil is often referred to as the Leeds Devil, and in fact is often seen near an area called Leeds Point, which is also named after the story, and it's supposed the origin place of the Jersey Devil. The most common description of the Jersey Devil is a winged biped with hooved feet, clawed talons on the end of its arms, and a large hairless tail, though there are certainly other descriptions. So that is what the Jersey Devil is supposed to look like.
That's quite the description there.
Isn't it, though?
Yep.
Now, before we go on to much else, let's take a moment for a word from our sponsor. Well, how do you feel, babe?
I feel sponsored.
Me too.
Sponsorness! Yay!
So, let's talk about some famous stories and sightings. Because the Jersey Devil has been seen by some quite famous people.
Are we talking famous like New Kids on the Block famous? Or are we talking famous like future presidents? Or are we talking famous like...
We're talking famous like government officials and historical figures.
Okay.
So, in 1778, Commodore Stephen Decatur visited the Hanover Ironworks in the Pine Barrens to test fire some cannonballs. Now, according to legend, a pale white creature... According to legend, a pale white creature was seen flying above the range. Decatur fired upon the creature, striking it with a cannonball. However, the creature continued its flight unfazed.
I see.
Now, work on Decatur's home in Washington, D.C. in 2007 and 8 seemed to indicate that this encounter might not have been accidental. We do know that Decatur was indeed in the area to test the cannonballs forged by Hanover and Bastow. But among his entourage was Dr. James Killian, 19th century abnormalist and cryptid hunter.
Ah, cryptid hunter are people.
Ooh.
Now, in Bordentown, New Jersey, at a place called Point Breeze, Joseph Bonaparte,
As in the Bonapartes?
older brother to Napoleon Bonaparte, yes,
That's the Bonapartes I was thinking of.
former king of Naples and former king of Spain, made his home after the defeat of his younger brother.
I'm waiting for you to say something about medicine.
Medicine?
Hint, hint.
Are you dropping more hints?
Hint, hint.
I see.
It seems like he was quite well liked in New Jersey while he lived there.
The devil or Mr. Bonaparte?
Mr. Bonaparte.
Okay.
When his home was destroyed by fire in 1820, he managed to convert the stables into a new home with the help of the locals. So it seems he was pretty well liked.
Yeah, and there's those fires again.
Also, they replaced a lot of his books because his library was mostly destroyed. So that should tell you how much the township held him in esteem. In fact, once the new place was complete, it was often referred to as the second finest home in America after the White House.
Well, now that is impressive.
Now, Joseph Bonaparte was an avid hunter. He liked to hunt deer and could often be found hunting in the woods on his property.
I see.
You hunt deer?
Well, he did.
People do, yes.
It was the 1800s.
That makes me sad. People who hunt deer make me sad.
It was the 1800s. People didn't have much to do. What do you want to
go read a book?
Also, there wasn't, supermarkets. They kind of had to get their own stuff.
Go read a book.
So,
at least you're not killing rabbits.
During one such excursion, he came upon some remarkable tracks in the snow. The tracks, which seemed to end abruptly, as though whatever had left them had suddenly taken flight, resembled nothing more than those that might be left by a donkey walking on its hind legs.
Because there's only two.
Therein lies the tie-in, you see.
When Bonaparte reported the experience to a friend, he was told that he didn't care that they were the tracks of the famous Jersey Devil. Now, he had examined the tracks closely, unable to decide what could have made them, but was subsequently startled by the sound of loud hissing coming from behind him. He turned to face the strange noise, only to discover that a large winged creature with a horse-like head was at his flank. He stared at the creature, dumbfounded, until it hissed at him again and beat its wings, taking off into the air. Bonaparte was so surprised, in fact, that he forgot he had a rifle and never thought to shoot it at the beast.
Well, sometimes you freeze when you're in shock, and that would definitely shock me if I saw something I never saw before, so.
Well, here's the thing. Oddly enough, the guys at Graveyard Tales were talking about Lake Baikal last week. And one of the things they mentioned was some of the UFO sightings there and how the people didn't get them on camera. And that's a fairly common thing. The guys at Astonishing Legends mentioned it as well, is that something about seeing these otherworldly things, or a lot of times just people forget they have a camera. Which, I don't know that in that situation I'd be any better than anyone else. But
well, sure enough. Yeah, that would...
You'd just be standing there as well. I'm sure I would as well, too. I'd just be like, whoa, what is that? But then if something tried to touch me, my instinct would be like, oh, no, that's bad, no.
I hear you, yeah, that would mess with me.
Don't touch me.
So after that experience, Bonaparte took heed and was impressed enough by the legend and his experience that whenever he went hunting thereafter, he went looking for the Jersey. He kept his eye out for the Jersey Devil. So, now mind you, I did not get every sighting. There's hundreds of them.
Right. Obviously, I mean, in a couple hundred years, it's...
it was seen earlier this year. I just